Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today I'm breaking down a shocking horror action film called The Mummy. Spoilers are coming fast, so beware. The movie begins in 1127 AD, when a band of English Crusader knights seize a glowing red ruby from the sands of ancient Egypt. Desperate to keep it hidden forever, they bury the jewel in the tomb of one of their own, sealing it beneath stone and shadow. Centuries vanish in an instant, and we jump to modern-day London, where a construction team accidentally uncovers the long-lost tombs. Scientists rush to the scene, among them the enigmatic Henry Jekyll. He suspects these tombs tie back to the erased legend of Princess Amenet, a name almost wiped clean from history itself. Through a sudden flashback, the sands of time sweep us into ancient Egypt. We see Amenet, the only daughter of a mighty pharaoh. She was trained like a warrior, ready to claim her throne and command the kingdom. But fate betrayed her when her father remarried, producing a son who replaced her as heir. The crown that was hers by blood slipped from her grasp. Furious and desperate, Amenet made a sinister pact with Set, the Egyptian god of death. He promised her limitless power if she gave him flesh and form. With a mystical dagger, he offered her the chance to make him real. The moment she clutched that blade, Amenet transformed. Her skin burned with black tattoos, her eyes glowed red, and her pupils split into two. With terrifying calm, she crept into her father's chambers and slaughtered him, his wife, and even the newborn child. Her soul burned with murder, and blood stained her destiny. But when she tried to sacrifice her lover to finish the dark ritual, priests struck. They cut her lover down before her horrified eyes. Punishment came swiftly. Amenet was condemned to be mummified alive, sealed inside a sarcophagus dripping with mercury, and entombed far away in Mesopotamia, cursed to never escape. The story jumps again, this time to war-torn Iraq, where American soldiers Nick Morton and Chris Vail recklessly ignore orders. Nick is no ordinary sergeant, he's a thief in uniform, chasing relics of the ancient world to sell on the black market. Chris, uneasy and afraid, begs him to stop, warning that greed will get them both killed. Before long, chaos erupts. Insurgents surround them, bullets rain down, and death closes in. Desperate, Nick calls for an airstrike. Moments later, the sky roars as missiles obliterate the village in fire and thunder. But the earth itself collapses beneath their boots, revealing a gaping hole in the ground. Tumbling into the pit, they find the impossible Amenet's sarcophagus, bound by chains and dripping with mercury. Their commanding officer, Colonel Greenway, soon arrives with reinforcements, bringing along British archaeologist Jenny Halsey. The moment she sees Nick, she slaps him hard because he stole her precious map after their one-night stand. Sparks of betrayal burn between them, but the mission presses on. Flashlights pierce the darkness as the trio descend deeper into the tomb. Strange statues of Sphinx guard the sarcophagus, but oddly, their stone faces look inward instead of outward. Every detail screams danger. Mercury flows across the floor, and Jenny whispers that it was once used to weaken demons. Chris panics, insisting they leave, but fury pushes him over the edge. He fires at the chain binding the coffin. The sarcophagus jerks upward, and suddenly swarms of camel spiders crawl from the shadows. One sinks its fangs into Chris. Nick reels as visions flood his mind. Princess Amenet, beautiful yet monstrous, calling him "my chosen one." Jenny snaps him out of it, demanding they haul the coffin away before more horrors strike. Soon, the sarcophagus is strapped onto a military aircraft bound for London. But Chris, poisoned by the spider bite, starts to change. He rants, he sweats, and when Greenway stops him from opening the coffin, he lashes out. In a frenzy, he stabs Greenway. Soldiers scream, weapons rise, but Nick intervenes, holding them back. Torn by loyalty, Nick pleads with Chris, but when his friend lunges at him like a beast, Nick pulls the trigger and kills him himself. No time to breathe, the plane suddenly collides with a monstrous flock of crows. The birds smash through the cockpit, killing the pilots instantly. Alarms wail as the plane spirals into free fall. In the chaos, Nick makes his choice. He shoves the only parachute into Jenny's hands and throws her out of the aircraft. Screaming winds swallow her as the plane crashes into the English countryside. Everyone aboard dies. Except Nick. The next morning, bodies are lined in a morgue. Nick, zipped inside a corpse bag, suddenly gasps back to life. Stunned, he tears free, untouched by scars or wounds, and then Chris's ghost appears. Pale, twisted, whispering the truth, Nick has been cursed by a minute. She chose him as the vessel for Set. The vision vanishes as doctors storm in, astonished to find Nick breathing. Meanwhile, at the crash site, officers sift through wreckage. One finds the sarcophagus, and a Manette herself rising from death. In a blur, she stabs his eye and drains his soul, sucking his very life into her with a kiss of death. The second officer stumbles upon the horror too late. She seizes him, and his body withers to dust as her own flesh regenerates. Stronger now, she commands their corpses to stand as her enslaved zombies. Back in London, Nick and Jenny sit in a pub, grappling with madness. She thanks him for saving her and reveals what she's learned, the dagger of Set. Its hilt crowned by the stolen ruby. Only dagger and jewel united can give the god his full power. The Crusaders must have hidden it somewhere in Europe centuries ago. Driven by visions, Nick leads Jenny to the burial site of those very Crusaders. In the ruined halls, he suddenly blacks out. When he opens his eyes, he's inside a nightmarish church, seized by zombies. And then Amanda herself appears, majestic and terrifying. She whispers again, "My chosen one," as she smashes a statue to reveal the dagger, glittering with Forbidden's promise. She moves to finish the ritual, to bind Set into his body, but stops. The ruby is gone, the power remains incomplete. Jenny suddenly bursts onto the scene, pulling Amanet's furious gaze away from Nick. The enraged princess lunges toward her, but this distraction gives Nick the chance to break free. Dagger in hand, he slashes and fights off the swarming zombies, striking them down with desperate force. Together, Nick and Jenny dash into their van and speed away, but the undead rise again in their path. The van crashes violently, metal twisting as it flips over. Crawling from the wreck, the pair stare in terror as Amanet approaches with deadly Comintil armed soldiers storm in, firing mercury-tipped bullets that pierce her flesh. Bound once more, she's restrained while the shaken duo are pulled from the wreckage. Nick and Jenny are then taken beneath the Natural History Museum of London, into a hidden labyrinth of corridors. Strange artifacts line the walls, an eerie skull with sharp fangs, a monstrous scaly arm, evidence of creatures that shouldn't exist. Here, Nick meets Henry Jekyll, Jenny's secretive boss. Jekyll reveals he leads Prodigium, an underground order sworn to capture and study monsters. Meanwhile, Amanette lies chained, mercury coursing through her veins, keeping her powers muted. Yet even in chains, she hisses that Nick's fate is sealed, his curse cannot be undone. At the same time, Prodigium's dig team uncovers the missing ruby hidden with the Crusaders, but Amanette senses it instantly. With sinister focus, she summons a spider, sending it crawling into a technician's ear. Under her spell, the man sabotages the mercury machine, shattering her restraints. Henry soon learns of the ruby and, shaken, prepares to inject himself with a serum, but Nick confronts him, demanding the truth. Jekyll admits the unthinkable: they must kill Nick to prevent Set's return. Nick explodes with rage, but the scientist insists it's for humanity's survival. Nick refuses to accept this doom, grabs the serum, and bolts, but horror follows. Jekyll transforms into his brutal alter ego, Edward Hyde. With monstrous strength, Hyde savagely pummels Nick. Guards drag Jenny away as she pounds helplessly at the glass, screaming for him. Battered and bloodied, Nick claws for survival until he finds the syringe. He stabs it into Hyde, forcing the monster back into Jekyll. Gasping, Nick and Jenny escape, determined now to destroy the ruby themselves. But Amanette will not wait. Ripping free from chains, she slaughters soldiers, draining their souls with ravenous hunger. Her skin restores, her beauty returns, and she snatches the dagger of Set into her hands. Glass shatters across the Prodigium base as she unleashes her fury, then marches to the Crusader's tomb. There, she resurrects the knights who rise as armored zombies. Her army sweeps through the tomb, cutting down Prodigium soldiers with merciless force. In the chaos, she seizes the missing ruby and sets it back into the dagger at last. The weapon is whole again. Meanwhile, Nick and Jenny encounter Chris's ghost, who warns them of danger but points them toward the ruby. Yet before they can reach it, the resurrected Crusaders ambush them. Stone walls crumble as they are thrown into rushing sewer waters. Fighting for breath, Nick rips the heads off zombies with his bare hands, tearing them apart in savage desperation. Somehow, they escape and swim upward toward freedom, but doom awaits. Amenet herself rises from the water and drags Jenny down. Nick dives after her, thrashing in panic, but it's too late. Jenny's body goes limp. Shattered by grief, Nick attacks Amenet with all his strength. But she is too powerful, tossing him aside like a broken doll. Looming over him, she whispers coldly that there are fates worse than death, and claims Jenny is in a better place. Her hand clamps around his neck, demanding he surrender. She promises he will thank her when it's done. Dazed, Nick seems to agree, even accepting her kiss, but suddenly he seizes the dagger from her grasp. Lifting it high, he prepares to destroy the ruby and end her reign forever. Amenet shrieks, warning him that if he surrenders instead, he will gain the powers of a godlife and death at his command. Nick's eyes fall on Jenny's lifeless form, and anguish tears through him. He longs to save her, yet knows Amenet will enslave his soul. Trembling, he makes his choice. Nick plunges the dagger into his own chest. His body convulses as the curse floods him, his eyes splitting into double pupils, the mark of Set. Amenet, overjoyed, believes her triumph is complete. She opens her arms, expecting her king, but Nick turns on her with monstrous force, unleashing powers beyond imagination. He pins her down, his strength unstoppable, and begins to drain her very life. Amenet screams in terror as her beauty crumbles, her body collapsing back into a shriveled corpse. The princess of death is no more. Nick, now burdened with divine power, turns to Jenny's body. Gently he breathes life into her, her eyes snap open. She gasps in shock, alive once more. But when she searches for Nick, he hides in the shadows, refusing to show himself. She calls to him, tears streaming, begging him to stay. But he knows he is no longer human, only a cursed creature. Whispering his farewell, he vanishes into the night, leaving her heartbroken. Days later, Henry and Jenny seal Amenet's corpse inside a new sarcophagus, filling it with mercury to ensure she never rises again. But elsewhere, across the burning sands of the desert, Nick rides once more, Chris alive again by his side. The two outlaws gallop on horseback into the horizon, ready to chase new adventures in a world forever changed by monsters.